Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to throw double walled things. So if you're curious as to what that is, that would be like this planter where you can see that the planter and the dish are attached. This can also mean chips and salsa bowls. This could also be double walled cups, whatever you'd like it to be. I'm just going to be showing you guys how to split the clay while you're throwing it, and we'll go ahead and get into it. So today you're going to need your bucket of water, a sponge, a wire tool, and I always suggest a needle tool, but it's not necessary. Same thing with your wooden tool. These are always my go-to things when I go ahead and throw. And of course, you're gonna need some clay. You can always start small and then work your way up if you'd like, just to kind of get used to the techniques as I show them to you, or you can just go ahead and try it out. But more clay will be a little bit more difficult at first, so I do suggest starting small. But let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're gonna wanna do is we're going to grab our clay, go ahead and stick it onto the vat. Go ahead and get some water on it and we'll get centered. Now remember, the more clay that you end up using, the harder it's going to be to center. So it might take a little bit of time. And I always like to cone when I center. I don't know if you guys are into that. I can also do a video if anyone is curious about coning, but okay, so now that we have this centered, I'm gonna go ahead and really decide on what I wanna make here because it really determines how much we open this up. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a planter first, and then I'm gonna show you guys how to apply the exact same scale to a chips and salsa bowl right after this. So we'll go ahead and make our hole, just like you would with any regular size like bowl or plant pot. I always like to do it with a sponge. If you end up throwing with nails, it does help a lot to use a sponge. So we have this, we're gonna go ahead and open this up to about as wide as we want that plant pot. And you always wanna make sure that when you guys throw, that you're compressing. I don't think I've gone over this in my previous videos, but if you find that the bottom of your pots start to really like crack, even though you got all the water out of them after throwing, I do suggest doing a couple like compressions at the bottom once you open this up. One, because you wanna do it now because of the fact that it's right here in front of us, but if we end up waiting until the end, it's just gonna be harder to get down there. But it'll help kind of smush the clay particles together and get a lot of the water out, so that way it doesn't end up cracking. Because moisture will leave a little bit of air in there, and that's what will cause that separation when it dries. So what we're gonna do is, now that we have this here, if you have any sort of weird edge, your stuff tends to go flat at the top when you open this up. What I like to do first is we wanna get this nice and even, so that way it's easier to kind of separate. So I'm just gonna kind of press my palm and my fingers together, and sometimes I like to use my thumb at the top to kind of angle that down so it kind of looks like this like flat shape here. So when we're going to separate this, I'm going to be on my right side because the wheel's going counterclockwise, and if I was over here and if I slip, I'll end up cutting it. So instead of just immediately pulling this up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finger. Now, because this is a lot of clay down here, I'm not going to take it immediately. I'm going to go a little bit further down, and I'm just going to press into it and push this down. This is going to end up being our dish. Now, you don't want to just throw that down and trap a bunch of air under there. So what I like to do is I kind of like to keep my hand on the side while I push this down, so that way it doesn't just like fold over and trap air underneath it. Because when you end up wiring it off and picking it up later, you're going to end up seeing that. So compress here to keep that flat, push down, so that way this edge isn't just folding. And if it's easier, again, sponge once you get close enough. And we can just kind of use this and flatten this out a little bit. So you're going to flatten this out like a plate. Now we have all this stuff in the middle that we can work from. So now we're just going to go into the middle and throw this like we would a normal pot. We'll start to lift, but we're just not going to grab from this outer edge here. Grabbing the water as needed. Now this is just starting to flare out, and honestly I'm almost done pulling it, so I'm just going to kind of let it keep going as I pull instead of trying to bring that back in. Now if you want this any wider at the bottom, like this is like too much for you, you can always go ahead from the inside. I always use a sponge, but you can use your fingers, and you just kind of push out towards the side there. Out and down from the inside here. I'm gonna go ahead and clean up my outer edge. I think we're looking pretty good. So, finishing touches that I like to do on this is use your wooden tool to kind of get these edges off. So, we're just gonna go to the edge, really kind of narrow that in. Because this is attached, I wouldn't suggest trimming. I usually don't. And so, trying to clean up those edges now is gonna be kind of important. Just that way later you'll like to do minimal effort. We can always curve this bottom, this outer edge up just a little bit more if we decide that, you know, it's a little too shallow to catch the water that'll be coming from our pot. Because what we'll do is we'll put drainage holes in here afterwards. I'm gonna go ahead and do this one more time. And there we have a planter. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this off. One more tip that I like to show you guys is that if you have something a bit wider that you're worried about, you know, the wire getting slack underneath and it's gonna end up cutting through, a really good tip that I like to do is you really want to pull your wire tight, put it underneath a little bit, and just slowly start to turn your wheel. It's going to make it a little bit easier, and it's not going to give as much excess in the middle for the slack. And you just pull that through slowly while it's spinning, but make sure that you have a really tight grip on that wire. And that way you don't have to worry too much about it. So there's the planter. I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys a chips and dip bowl. Now for our chips and dip bowl. Go ahead and center. Alright, so once you're centered, guys, this one's gonna be a little bit different. So instead of opening up the inside first, what I prefer to do with my chips and dip bowl is actually start on the outside. So that part where I kind of push down after I open it with the planter, I'm actually going to do this now. So instead of opening up here, I'm just going to take my finger and flatten this out. If you saw my previous plate video, this is very similar in technique right here because this is technically a flatter object, and so it can almost be like a plate. We're just going to push down and out. And if that feels like it's still not enough, go ahead and go a little bit further into the center, push down and out. If you start from the center and push down and out, what that'll do is if you do end up getting a little bit of air under there, when you compress, it's just going to kind of sweep outwards. It's not going to get further into your pot. And I think that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do is now that we have that out there, I'm going to go ahead and open this. And this will be our dip bowl. So we'll compress again. And if you want to give that a nice shape, try to not leave a ton of like a lot of like small spaces under here. Like if you can have this join smoothly on the outside, that'll really help you as far as like cleaning these things go and functionality, because you don't want food and bacteria getting in there. So I always smooth that out later. So we'll go ahead and go. All right, so I think that's pretty good there. Maybe like a guacamole size bowl. I like that though, because I like guac. So now that we have this here, we have this flat plate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop my finger underneath here, similar to how we did in the plates. And I'm just going to lift this up a little bit. And if we want to keep going, I can really dig my finger under there to make this a bit more elevated. If you do intend on trimming these, you do want to kind of make sure that either this is large enough to support all of this when you flip it upside down, or that this is taller than this so that way it has that outer edge. So one thing I do like to do here is have our wooden tool, because my fingers can't quite get under there without my nails scratching. So I'm going to get my wooden tool under there. Don't let if you guys are throwing with nails, don't let anyone tell you that you can't throw with them, or don't believe that you have to sacrifice them in order to do pottery, because, well, We all just like having our hands feel pretty sometimes. Now, if you feel like this isn't proportionate, which I'm kind of looking at this and like it doesn't, this feels huge for the amount of chips you can fit, and you kind of want to think about this and like functionality wise, you don't want to have like a giant thing of guac or salsa in here, not enough chips to fill it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a little bit off the top, slowly push in, and we'll get a little bit extra off. That kind of feels better to me. Alright, so there is our chips and salsa dish. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, check out my website if you want to see some cool art, but thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.